Well, let's go live to Bulawayo now. That's where Dudu Ramela is standing by. Dudu, of course, we've just been replaying those bites from Robert Mugabe. Any reaction to what he said on the streets?
Plenty of reaction. We're not in the streets for now. We'll go there for you just now, Shahan. But I want to touch on this. It was quite interesting watching what Robert Mugabe had to say and thinking back to one of his mentors, the former Tanzanian president, Mr. Julius Nyerere, upon gaining independence, Zimbabwe that is. Mr. Nyerere said to Robert Mugabe, "You have inherited a jewel. Now look after it." And now as we reflect on whether he has looked after that jewel or not, and also taking a look at what he said this afternoon, I'm joined now by Nkanyiso, who is a political analyst, as well as VIMBAISHE. She is an independent candidate who is also running for the presidential election. Thank you very much for joining us, Nkanyiso. Let's get straight into it. Your reaction when Robert Mugabe really straight out came to say that he's not supporting his former party, ZANU-PF, and he's going with the opposition. Any surprises?
Well, for me, no surprises there. You see in Robert Mugabe a very bitter, a very angry man, because this is a man who had anticipated he would die in office. So this is a man who is certainly not happy to see his colleagues who are responsible for having removed him from power. But what you see there as well is a man who is struggling really to endorse Chamisa. But I think ultimately it's an endorsement that he eventually gave, although not in specific words. So I think it's a last-minute attempt by an alliance between the MDC alliance and the NPF, which I think has always been in the background in terms of discussions. And it's really a culmination of Nelson Chamisa's rally yesterday when he spoke of the former president being on his side, having passed him a ball, so to speak, in his words. So I think it's really an attempt to try and sway the vote for the G40 unhappy ones who would then be able to vote for Nelson Chamisa.
Is it not too little, too late? We have only a couple of hours to go to the vote.
I think it could really be a little too late, especially because Robert Mugabe has not really come out to campaign with the NPF. So I really don't see what effect it would have really for the MDC alliance at this point.
VIMBAISHE, let me come to you. You are an independent candidate and you're also running in the election. When Robert Mugabe was asked about his support for women and which candidate he will support, he says he only knows two women. What does that talk to in terms of the female participation? We know there's only 4 women candidates that are taking part in this election. When you heard those words, what went through your mind?
Well, personally, okay, first of all, I'm not running for presidential. I'm actually running for House of Assembly. But when I heard him speak, for me, it just made me realize that as females, I don't think they are ready to accept us. We are far from getting into the space. We need to fight harder. But as well, it also gave me more oomph inside me to actually work harder to prove that we actually can deliver. Because all he said was they've got nothing to offer. They don't have much to offer. But what are they going to offer if they haven't been given the place to offer it? But at the end of the day, he did say what he had to say, and it just leaves us as women, especially figuring out the fact that there is more than 55% of the female vote here right now in the electoral. And that for me is actually a disappointment.
Nkanyiso, in terms of reaction, just talking to a couple of people on the street, some saying he looked very frail. He looked like a man who was, you said a little bit earlier on, you used the word bitter, but some people using the word, well, it's just an old person who's really has had his time. In terms of the real impact that it would have on ground level, how do you see it working?
Well, personally, I think Robert Mugabe is not a brand for any Zimbabwean politician. This is someone who had literally every single citizen in the streets against him. And I think to want to be associated with him at this point is not very beneficial to any politician, especially to Nelson Chamisa. So I really think that it may not work out to the best in terms of what they may have thought it would, because really this is a man that is hated. This is a man that is responsible for Gukurahundi, for massacres in the Matabeleland. This is a man that really everyone in November had gotten to a point where they said enough is enough. So when you then bring him out now, you really remind Zimbabweans of where they are coming from, where there was this dictator, and for him to try and endorse Nelson Chamisa, I really think it could actually be ZANU-PF ploy. It could be ZANU-PF really trying to push this Mugabeism to Chamisa and sort of exclude him from who they are and who they want, where they want to go. So I really think it really would not work out.
And that was going to be my next question. The mere fact that he was allowed to, on state television, to actually give this address, is Mnangagwa worried at all?
Well, I don't think he's worried. I actually think they may have played it out to that effect, because this is a man, remember, who is under state protection. Many have also said that this is a man who is currently detained in one way or another. So for them to have gotten to a point where there was actually a press conference, I think it is part of their machinations. It is really part of the plan, the ZANU-PF, the broader ZANU-PF plan to say, okay, we will let him talk only when we want him to talk, and we'll ensure that when he does talk, he talks in a specific way. And what happened today is that he came out and he really distanced himself from this new dispensation that they speak of. And I think it's very dangerous for the MDC alliance.
VIMBAISHE, when you speak to people on the ground, the most sticking issue being the shortage of currency. You drive from Harare to Bulawayo, it's like day and night in Harare. Infrastructure-wise, nothing much has really changed. What is it that is going to take for whomever is going to come into power next in Zimbabwe to sort of shift things around, and the role that you yourselves will be playing?
Personally, I'm going to shift this question, and I'm going to answer it as well, to the fact that us as a generation need to come in and create change for ourselves. Because if you realize the events of today, what just happened is the fact that we went back again to their generation, to their times. We went back again to being reminded on how he didn't trust this person, on how what happened after independence, on how he fled out of the country, and how he feels about this and that. And what about us? I mean, we've got a whole generation, besides the the currency and the cash shortages. We don't have great schools, great government schools. We've got classrooms that accommodate over 60 to 70 children per one teacher. We don't have, roads. You spoke about the infrastructure. It's terrible. All I'm bringing all this to is the fact that us as a generation need a chance. We need to now come in and create that change for ourselves, because if we continue going backwards, all we did today in that conference was taken aback, like what Nkanyiso just said. We're just taken back to the 80s, back to the Zimbabwe we tried to run away from, and tomorrow is the election, and what are we doing? We're just going back.
Thank you very much to the both of you for joining us this afternoon. And Shahan, as you've just heard, reaction on former President Robert Mugabe's address to the nation this afternoon, saying that he has taken the country back, really reminded people of things that weren't necessarily good, and has neglected a particular generation. And that's where we'll leave it. We'll get more reaction for you from the streets of Bulawayo here in Zimbabwe.
All right, thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Dudu Ramela, our anchor there in Zimbabwe.